Yeah. Hello, everyone, wherever you are in the world. It is a fantastic evening in London, and I am joined here by a great guest with a fantastic name and legacy. So this isn't Game of Thrones. This isn't the ITV News. This is the Architecture Social with a planning superstar, Mr. Jon Snow, from somewhere else in London. And I happen to work with Jon Snow in Build Studios. Jon, how are you this evening?
Oh, Steve, thank you very much for the introduction. That was quite a beautiful thing. Probably the best introduction I've ever had. I am wonderful, thank you. I am wonderful. I've just finished a busy day.
Yes. No rest for us, it seems. No rest for the wicked. But actually, Jon, you're far from wicked. You've got an excellent reputation, and you very kindly said that you would make time to do this podcast episode because it's something that I wanted to do for a long time. So you do me two favors. So one, I haven't done one of these for a while, so I'm getting back in the saddle, and it's good to do it in good company. But secondly,
tick
number one. But secondly, we're going to talk about the wonderful and for some, the mysterious world of planning. Okay. So, and we'll go on to segue that because I used to practice architecture a lot, and I was part of the design team when working with planning consultants. And you're a fantastic planning consultant, Jon. Maybe it would be great if you could tell us briefly about yourself and your business and all that good planning stuff.
Thank you very much. No, and thank you for the opportunity as well, because it strikes me from my experience in planning that not very many people know what it is that I do.
Right.
Or how it is that I work. So this is a great opportunity for me to sort of chat about that. I mean, so I've been working in planning for 16 years.
Wow.
Around 16 years. I've stuck at it for that long. So
you're an expert.
So I've got well, I mean, to varying degrees, depending on what question you ask me. So I started off with a job at the council, funny enough. Yeah. Really, really junior job. And then I progressed into the planning department. I got a planning job. I did a planning related degree and a postgrad. And really it was sort of upwards from there. In the last 16 years, I've worked for several different private companies. I've worked for the council prior to that for a few years. So I've got quite a varied experience. And in the last, how long has it been? 15 months? I've been running my own company. Wow. So I've taken all of the experience that I've gained and put that into a business, put that into a company. And I provide advice mainly to architects, developers, business owners on planning matters. So if you were an architect or a business owner or a developer and you wanted to build some houses or build some flats or develop a piece of land, or you wanted to change the use of your shop, or anything related to that and a whole lot more, these are all things that I could advise you on.
Amazing. Well, we'll have to give you a round of applause first for setting up a business during the pandemic. It's an absolute brave time to do that. It sounds like you're doing really well. And I've actually seen you in the office and you are doing really well. So I would love to know, Jon, because I think what of it's interesting is finding out how people got into planning. Because with architecture, for me, even though I don't technically do it so much anymore, I work in the architecture industry, but I work in a bit of recruitment. I work in a bit of internal HR and a bit of internal talent. Well, actually, I wanted to study architecture. I was super, super keen to get into it. So tell us about yourself. How did you get into planning, studying it?
You know what? That's a great question. And it's probably the question I get asked the most often.
Really?
Planning, it is, believe it or not. Planning, perhaps, if you compare it to architecture for some people is a bit of a vocation.
Okay.
And it's something that they want to be from quite a young age, and they've they want to design spaces in a way that can positively affect people.
Yeah.
With planning, I got into it through when I was looking at the various university courses that were available.
Yeah.
It was suggested to me by a lecturer, and what they effectively said was, if you want to make a difference in the world, you want to make a difference to the environment around you, then planning can be a really good place to start. I didn't know much about it, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
At that stage, but it was something that I then, it was around the same time as starting my university degree that I got a job at the council. And the job at the council, I started out in the really junior pieces of work. So things like digitising gas pipes and producing site maps and going out on site with the planners in the office. And you'd be dealing with all kinds of different issues, but all of these issues, there was a lot of problem solving, a hell of a lot of problem solving, and a lot of, you were looking at harm to people or positives to people through development. So through things that were built in the world, and in a city, in a town, in the countryside. And yeah, I was quite, I guess, inspired by the fact that I could make a bit of a difference. I'm not going to say that at that stage I thought I could change the world or anything crazy like that, but I could make a difference through doing some planning work.
Yeah.
And so really that's how I got into it.
Brilliant.
And from then on, I enjoy dealing with people, and planning is a lot about people that you deal with.
Yeah.
I enjoy articulating arguments, and I enjoy problem solving, and those sort of three things are a lot of what planning for me certainly is about.
It's amazing. I think it's definitely. Do you know what? On some ends, I always say that if I didn't do architecture, maybe I would have gone into interior design or planning. But for any listeners out there, probably a good distinction to make, which earlier in my career I didn't fully understand, John, was that when you're talking about planning, you're not talking about master planning, you're not talking about large urban design. You're on about actually when it comes to buildings being built on site, you're involved, you work with the local councils, you work at what can be made, you make sure that the buildings plug into the frameworks, you make sure that the bins are accessible, you make sure that there's enough. You know my story on bins.
The bins have got to be accessible, Steve. They've got to be accessible.
Mate, it's got to be accessible, and we got to have the shared ownership, and we got to have all these things, and it's actually really, really important, because otherwise, and there's a lot of great architects doing out there the right thing, but you also have to safeguard certain buildings and keep the fabric of the neighborhood. And so planning's really important and really, really complicated. Before, I've got another question popping up. But before you do it, let's your headphones. There's a bit of rustling going around there, John. Let's get it.
Oh, is the audio all off? You know what it is? I've got my.
We've got to plug it back in.
Other headphone.
Got to put it back in.
Do I need to go double in?
Yeah. Because when I was enjoying that, we was getting a bit of action. But we're gonna keep all that in, because this is what
have I ruined the start of this feature completely with my?
No, you haven't.
Have to dub me in later, aren't you?
No. I can say we can post edit all that out. But let's keep continuing on with the narrative. So I'm excited by this. So you got your first job, right, in the council. Now, okay, I had my first experience working as an intern for the Swansea City Architecture Department, and so it was really interesting, really eye-opener, very different than private practice architecture. How was your experience in council? Did you learn a lot?
That's a very good question. That is a very good question. So I did learn a lot in the council. I'd say that the council is a lot about the process.
Yeah.
So what working at the council teaches you, it teaches you how the planning process fits together.
Yeah.
And it teaches you how you can affect that.
Yeah.
But what it doesn't, the one thing working for the council doesn't allow you to do, which is why I ended up in the private sector, is it it sets a framework within which you have to operate, and you can't really exist outside of that framework and outside of those rules. And you have developers coming to you who want to do things that are perhaps a little bit outside the box, a little bit not in accordance with policy, and you want to help them, but you're not really allowed to. So that's really what kind of ended me up working for the working for the private sector ultimately, was because I wanted a lot more freedom, effectively, to help people solve problems. Through the planning system. And just to come back on your earlier point as well, by the way, there's a common kind of, if you think of what is a town planner, right? So paint me a picture of a town planner, and you go, well, a town planner is someone who literally, they plan towns, don't they? So they design towns, and they design where your house is going to go, and where your waste facilities are going to go, and where your roads are going to go, and how all these things are going to fit together. That is a planner. But as you say, that's not exactly what I do. So that's the kind of the planner that would work at the council.
Yeah.
So the councils have a responsibility to put local plans together, which I'm sure lots of people have heard of.
Yeah.
But a local plan sets out where things can be built, the policies that regulate development, and everything in between. What I do is I work sort of on the development side, if you will. I work to try and interpret those policies, and to try and find ways for developers to maximise their interest on site, while bearing those policies in mind.
I think it's interesting. So when I did my diploma, John, in architecture, when I was excited, full of youth as we were back then, and and
indeed,
you don't know,
back in the day,
computers were around, but I was a happy soul. And so my dissertation, one of it, we had to basically look at a town, in north of England. It's called, if anyone knows Hull, so we were heading up north, right? And so
nice part of the world.
Yeah, that's part of the world. And so I got really into planning and policy. And so we had to make this regeneration scheme. And so I went really, really deep and learning all about Section 106 and loads of loopholes and all this stuff. So my proposal at the time was to build a mega casino, because it would bring in lots and lots of money, which is what Hull needed. But as you know, with mega casinos, and putting on your planning hat here, right? What would be the massive side effects of casino? You'd have gamblers everywhere, bless them. We'd have massive issues. There could be like a spike in crime and all this stuff. So my whole dissertation was getting these massive Section 106s to offset my mega casino. So I got really into it, and it was really interesting, like how far I could push it to get the biggest casino possible. And that was my project. And I actually got a first for it. But I remember one of the critics came in, and he was like, I'm appalled by your mega casino, but it is an interesting exercise. And I was like, well, we need to bring in an income. So we just get in the game. And it's not called gambling; it's called the gaming industry, John. It's the gaming industry, as they like to call themselves. So I had a little foray in that, and then the other one, which I'll tell you, is when I got my proper job in architecture. I was working on a big scheme, and I had to work with a planning consultant. And I've told you this story. I messed up all the bins. I think I put 2 bins for a tower, John. You know what I mean? So you've all the poor souls there trying to put in their Deliveroo boxes and stuff, probably were cursing me, but luckily it never got that far, because my director was like, no way the planners are going to approve that, because there's not enough bins there. So I was saved by the bell. I've had 2 forays. I've had a foray in the exciting part of it, and I've had a foray in the industry. But you must have had a lot of experience working with architects, and I'm sure a lot of positive ones. And I'm sure you've also had a lot of interesting journeys as well. I mean, do you find, and here comes my question, is do you find that, each project, it can vary based upon the team members you've got and the projects as well? Is every job different in your experience?
Yeah, massively so. Actually, I mean, I do everything from sort of things at the small end. So you might get,
Yeah.
say, helping somebody with their house extension.
Yeah.
Although I tend to do less of that nowadays, up to trying to get planning permission for sort of sites with 10 plus units. I've also got some schemes on at the moment for the conversion of commercial buildings where we're generating, 30, 40 plus units as part of that.
Yeah.
And everything in between. I'm also working on a public inquiry at the moment as well on behalf of some local residents. So yeah, it's massively varied. I guess one of the things I enjoy the most about it is probably the number one sort of group of people, and well, that's why we're talking. I'd imagine that I work with is architects.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, I can tell you what the rules are, and I can tell you what a site could accommodate.
Yes.
In broad terms, and I can tell you a strategy that you should use to pursue development in a certain location. But I'm not an architect. I'm not a designer, and so I work with a lot of architects with the sole purpose of them putting, drawings and designs to to my words, if you will, because I can review the policy, and that's something I do on a daily basis, and I do it with lots of different people, and I really enjoy that side of it. And I think that's why I work well at it, is because I actively enjoy engaging with people.
Yeah. Well, and I've noticed as well that it's actually quite a people-orientated job, isn't it? Because you've got to constantly communicate, you've got to constantly work with people, and I do like the notion that you bring in the architect's vision to life. And what I've noticed by sitting by you as well is that, because planning could be interpreted in both ways, like, oh gosh, here comes the planning consultant, I'm going to get my ideas squashed. But actually, no, your role is like, look, this is going to be a tough one, but we'll do our best for it, and we just need to make sure this is here. And so actually it's the opposite. It's not like someone putting the rules in saying, oh, you can't do that. You're basically looking for the best outcome in the design. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's all very well that there's kind of two approaches to planning. You can have design led, which is where you start with a blank piece of paper, come up with a design, and then see how it complies with planning. Or you have what I would call sort of planning led, and planning led is that I will start off by saying, well, I think this is what we could, what this site could achieve, and then we go to the architect, and the architect can draw something up, and
nice.
And that relationship is really, really key, and I'd say it's the number one sort of it's the number one aspect of achieving the best that you can out of sites. And you need to have really good communication in that, because one of the big things that I'm very conscious of is, because I'm not an architect and because I'm not a designer, I do have views on other people's designs, but obviously appreciate that I have to give my comments, but obviously without being a designer myself, I can only go so far. But equally, I can. So you see what I mean? I don't want to offend anyone, but at the same time, we have to say, if something doesn't work, then it doesn't work. Or if something needs adjusting in a certain way, then it needs adjusting. And so there's a need for, you have to be quite, I guess, diplomatic with how you approach things.
Yeah.
And there's quite a lot of negotiation as well, because with planning authorities, it's not just, well, one size fits all. This site is going to accommodate X amount of units, for instance. It all depends on the individual site circumstances.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of negotiation with the council, which requires a lot of back and forth. And I'm a big believer in how you approach people and relationships has a big impact on your work and the outcomes that you can achieve.
Yeah.
And so I try and approach things really positively, and I try and, when people come to me and say, well, we've got this difficult site, I try and be realistic about, well, I think this is what you can realistically achieve, but we can try this strategy or try that strategy. So yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I forgot to ask you another important question about how you feel about my mega casino proposal from a planning perspective.
I That's a great question.
You can see
I
both
mean,
sides of it, though.
for
We'll
what
bring
you
a massive income into an area which could use that income, but it comes at a cost, John. So we need to sit down and get them Section 108s ready. I need a lot of parks ready.
for one thing, I'm not quite. I mean, so I don't know if I can mention them by name, given this is going out, but I used to work as a planning consultant for one of the big burger chains.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Yeah. Good.
Right. And so I advised on new restaurants, shall we say.
Yeah.
And much like your mega casino, they had lots of economic benefit, but from a local perspective, there was a lot of perceived.
Yeah.
They're noisy. They can generate a lot of people traffic, potentially a lot of litter and all these kind of things. And so, yeah, with things like that, I mean, your mega casino, there's a lot of advantages to it, but I guess
there's costs.
The role of a good planning consultant is to balance those things up. You see, and is to approach the council and say, yes, it's going to have some impact, but what can we do to lessen those impacts?
Yeah. Well, I had a big budget with my mega casino job. We could even have like some people touring the streets with like a little car just sweeping in. It's like this. We got to keep it friendly in the mega casino world. But true story though, just to bring it back down.
But sorry, I was just going to say, but it's exactly those kind of initiatives as part of your planning proposal that could, obviously in a fictional scenario, but if you were going to propose a mega casino, it's things like that. It's that kind of creative attitude that could potentially solve some of the concerns.
Well, you've
definitely got a good mind for this, Steve.
Yeah, my talents are wasted on it, isn't it? What am I doing in recruitment?
They are, mate.
Yeah, I had an Excel sheet as well, John. You'd laugh, where I was like, depending on how much customers I have, depends on how much I give back to the neighborhood. But going from the fictional to the real. Yeah, I've had another example of it as well. It made me laugh. So I grew up in a village called Pontarddulais in Wales, and there was nothing there apart from a local co-op, John, right? Okay. And there's big rumors like 6-7 years ago. I was like, oh, Steve. I'm like, yeah, what? Tesco's is coming. I go, what are the Tesco's going to come here for? Are you crazy? And so I was like, oh, yeah, well, they're starting to get louder. No, Tesco's definitely coming. I go, how do you know that then? It's my mate, Aaron. He goes, oh, they're starting to advertise, in the area. Oh, it's interesting. So believe it or not, big Tesco's. Now, bear in mind, this was this very small village in Wales, right? And then you had this big Tesco's there. And it was like a massive shed. It was a bit like the scene in, I don't know, with, it's not Shaun of the Dead, but the following one. When you got this quaint little village, you got this massive Tesco. And their Section 106 in my village was that they built like this little park and a roundabout, and it's all nice. So that's what they did for it. They did like a little area, where the skater kids and, when we were naughty boys in school, you'd have a cigarette kind of area. So they done all that up and they put like a fancy roundabout. But yeah, that's what they trade off with the village was. And it was really interesting because all the people from the village was like, oh, but that is a nice park. You know what I mean? They've done a nice job there with the bushes. It looks very nice. So it worked. And I've seen it myself. And that was the Section 106 that I actually can see when I go back home. And for anyone listening, I am allowed to do Welsh accents because I am Welsh. So it's not being racist or anything or self-deprecating. I am proud to be Welsh. But if I'm talking about a village in Wales, feels like a missed opportunity not to do it. Right. So it's moving swiftly on. Okay.
Thank you for that, Steve. Can I just say thank you for that? I
Did you enjoy it?
I do, but well, no, because actually it's a great example of what the planning system's all about. You see, because they built their Tesco and your town got some benefits.
Right. And the other bit as well, the other bit that I did in architecture is that when I was in architecture, and I made quite a few mistakes, but the one mistake I didn't do is that one of the exercises was I had to go around all these residential apartments and make sure that they were there at the time, and this was the requirement, and you could tell me if it's up to date or not, but we had what was called lifetime homes. So they had to be fully accessible. They had to be a certain size. You had to do all this stuff. So I had to spend many hours going around making sure you get the turning circle for a wheelchair user and all this stuff. And it was incredibly, incredibly important. And I remember there was this one difficult part of the building. And what you had, John, is because you got the area. So the developer wants the area and they want the number of flats, but then it wasn't quite lifetime home ready. So then you had to do the art form of juggling all the flats around so that I could make sure that the developer is happy, that they're getting a return on their investment. But I had to make sure then all the flats were lifetime homes equivalent. And at the time, and you tell me if this is true, but in planning, it's very much a case of the building has to comply. You can't say all these apartments, except for that dodgy one, complies. It had to work. I mean, is it still like that now, John? Is it like a lot of work making sure that every flat is accessible, every flat is up to codes? What do you see happen a lot at the moment?
So there are standards that new dwellings need to meet. So there are things. I mean, at the very basic level, you have a minimum floor space.
Yeah.
So let's take London, for example. London has minimum space standards for new developments.
Yeah.
And then it goes further than that in that when you get developments over a certain size, you need to incorporate things such as a certain amount of affordable housing and a certain amount of accessible housing.
Yeah.
And if you were going to comply with those requirements, obviously you need to be over a certain threshold, but you then are required to meet set standards. So in a similar way to your example, although I guess at that stage, if it was a new development, it would probably be more of a paper exercise, but you would need to demonstrate compliance with things like, if you're designing a disabled flat, for instance, thresholds and turning circles and having the appropriate space for showers and things like that. So that's a really big part of the planning system, and a really big part of the controls that are in place is, and a great example actually is that in London, anyone who's rented in London for any period of time, particularly at the sort of the lower end of the market, will have experienced a micro flat, for want of a better phrase.
A cupboard, you mean, John? The ironing board, and then the beds and the micro flat, basically.
Right. The compact flat, shall we say?
That's the salesman. It's cute. That's the word I'd say. It's very cute.
It's really cute. Yeah, it's really cute, and it's got air conditioning. Just open the freezer.
You open the front door. And your bay window.
Yeah, open the front door. Yeah. That exactly. But the whole intent behind the kind of standards that you've sort of mentioned is to try and avoid living standards kind of creeping downwards. The whole point of those controls is to try and bring things up as we progress, and to try and for instance, the planning system also has requirements for things like adequate natural light. So having a window is not necessarily good enough. Because you can have a window, but if it's up against a brick wall, or it's very small in size, then it's not necessarily going to improve your living conditions.
Correct.
So all of these things are part of the planning system, and it's very much if we can improve new housing stock in terms of the sizes, the amenities available, all of those things, then that's got to be for the for the better.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. And I imagine as well, it must be a great satisfaction when you get those wins, and those wins is that you better the design, people have an enjoyable apartment, or you make a positive, or even as you said, you've got the kind of the large scale and the small scale as well. And what I quite like about your business as well, and I know you're going to tell everyone where you are at the end, but I love the fact that you set up Tetrik Planning, and I love the fact that you work on smaller and larger projects as well. But I'm sure, is there any particular success stories that come to mind where you were like, okay, I know this job is a lot of hard work, but today I feel like it was worth it and I done a bit of good?
I don't think there's any one individual. I'd say when I feel success, is when, and luckily for me, it happens a few times a week, is when you speak to a client, and the client is complimentary for the work that you've done, whether that be you've managed to negotiate them a better position with the council, or yes, you might have secured planning permission for something, or you've solved a problem, and that happens several times a week, and you get a happy client and you get a happy customer. And for me, that is, that's a big win. If we can solve a few problems, and it doesn't always mean, oh, I've secured development for X amount of homes.
Yeah.
And I guess if that was my benchmark, then, well, you're not going to be happy several times a week, are you? Well, I mean, maybe I will be in a few years, but certainly at the moment, it's about the little wins. And the little wins is, as I say, sometimes it's as simple as someone's very confused about the development that's going on in their area and they want some advice, and you give them some advice, and they're very happy and pleased to receive it. So
wow. I think it's amazing. And so good on you for running your own business as well, and I respect that, because I'm in the process of gearing up my business, and you kindly, before the podcast began, was a gentle soul and listened to my woes about accounting, because it's a stressful thing. It's a stressful.
I think we both have those, don't we?
Well,
well,
this is it. And just to kind of, it's ironic, but as you told me, and we had a chat about this yesterday as well, when you run your own business, you have to do a lot of things. But there's a joy that you get from that as well. So I would love to know briefly what inspired you to kind of go from working, you mentioned in public, and you've gone in private as well, and now you've set up Tetrik Planning, and I love the name, by the way. But before we talk about the name or anything like that, tell us what made you kind of feel like, do you know what, I'm gonna do my own business.
I guess I thought I could do it better.
Oh, bold statement. Good.
Is that a bit? I guess to expand on that, because that is a bit.
Don't worry, John. I'm the same in recruitment, and so any other recruiters listening to this, I think they've got a love-hate relationship with me, because I think that recruitment could be a lot better as well. So don't worry about it. But go on, tell us about how you see planning.
I see planning, and I see the reason that I set up my business, because I feel like I can relate very well to my clients. And certainly that's what I try and do, and that's the aim. I don't always get it right, but I try and relate as best as I can to my clients. And oftentimes the biggest challenge with the planning system is getting the what am I trying to say? It's getting the sort of translating what the planning system allows someone to do for the client. And the planning system at times, for lots of reasons, can be quite frustrating. And one of the things I enjoy the most, and probably the reason I wanted to set up my own business, was because for me, I had a very particular way about how I wanted not just to deal with planning matters, because that's quite standard in many ways, but how I wanted to relate to clients, and how I wanted to manage that relationship. And certainly within a company, there's a lot more stopping you from doing that. Whereas when you work for yourself, I can deal with my clients how how I see is the best to do. So that's certainly, I can do it better, but if that explains it perhaps in a slightly better way.
Well, it does, and I do that. There's a lot that I enjoy with the architecture social as well. The downside, the upside is that you're your own boss. The downside is that you're also your own boss, so you're responsible for everything. Right?
Absolutely,
It's the blessing.
Absolutely,
it doesn't suit anyone who likes a blame culture, isn't it, John? Because it's like, oh, mistakes happened. It's me,
The bugs. I admire anyone who has the get up and go to start their own business. And I think we both started around a similar kind of time. It was quite pandemic-y, wasn't it? Sort of.
Yeah, there's an opportunity with that, but there's also a madness with it as well, isn't it? It's like it's a strange time.
It is a strange time, and I'd say that, as you say, running your own business it wasn't until I really got into it for a few months that I realised quite the scale of what you have to do yourself.
I know.
And this isn't me complaining, and I know we're not ones to just sort of outright moan or anything, but it is one hell of a challenge. But that is in itself the reason that you do it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because of the challenge.
Yeah.
It's it's both the best and the worst thing about running your own business.
I agree, and conversely as well, because I've had before this, I've had successful businesses and I've had failure businesses, and sometimes at the same time. So, for example, I used to run a recruitment business which was like financially super successful, but me and the other director completely fell out, and so it's it's what you define as a success is interesting, but even I think in business, failing is learning, and I'm constantly failing all the time, and today, even though I'm pulling my hair out on Xero, or I don't even know how you pronounce it, Xero accounting software, once I finally get there, it will be a great lesson, and it's one that then you add to the anecdotes of all the stuff isn't it? I'll be like, oh, you don't want to put that in your director's loan, but I think the process is rewarding. What I was going to say, though, because if anyone's got this far on the podcast, they've done exceptionally well to get past my Tesco story and my mega casino. So maybe we can
and listen to 37 minutes about planning. I mean, we're doing well, aren't we?
Well, the tips are up. So anyone that's got to the 37 minutes, you're in for a treat right now, because I'm going to ask for a good piece of advice, because probably a lot of the people listening are architects, and you have a few students who are, architects in the making and are fantastic. And anyone listening out there, you got to keep going, and you will totally get there. Just got to keep going. But for any architects, maybe who are working with planners as well, maybe what would be cool is to get your advice on how an architect can optimize their relationship with a planning consultant. I'm sure there's a few tidbits you've learned in your experience that you were like, oh, it makes a better working arrangement. Is there any insights you'd like to share for the 38 minutes crew?
Oh, well, for the stragglers, for the few. No, to be fair, this gets a good bit of coverage, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's many people hanging on to every word at 38 minutes in. I'd say it's all about communication.
Right.
And the one piece of advice I would give is, when you're communicating, you've got to try. It sounds a bit cliche, and I guess cliches exist for a reason, don't they?
Yeah.
But you want to try and listen to what the other person is saying as much as humanly possible.
Yeah.
And certainly do that before you respond with anything. And I think understanding comes from trying to listen, but not just listening, but hearing what the other person has to say.
Yeah.
If that answers the question, and I'd say it's in communication, it's really important to have sometimes a a big mouth. Some people have got bigger mouths than others, and be able to communicate what you want and what you need. But ultimately, being able to listen and understand where someone else is coming from and what someone else thinks about an issue is, that's, I think, really key to. Does that answer the question? I've partly forgotten what the question was. If I'm honest, it's getting late, I might have come at this a bit obtuse. So yeah,
no, I like it. You're saying communication is key. I think that's interesting because it's true for a lot of working relationships, isn't it? And I do think that normally when a business or a business relationship is going well, and what I've learned through recruitment is 99% of the time it's because the relationships deteriorated and communication is deteriorated. And, once that communication goes, then it's always difficult, and it's hard to kind of steer away. Well, look, it's the 40-minute mark. Now, on this podcast, John, we're going to do something else unconventionally. I would love to ask you if you have any questions for me that we can do live. And as you know, we have not scripted this, so I have no idea what you're going to say.
We have not. I have no script in front of me. I was working up until about 2 minutes before we jumped on. In fact, I think I was late. It's that unscripted.
Oh, where's it? No, you're unscripted.
Good. I was planning towns right up until 2 minutes past 6.
Dedicated.
Any questions for you? What do you enjoy the most about what you do, Steve?
Oh, there's definitely the learning aspect of it. Like, even though I bloody hate the counts at the moment, there's a thrill in knowing it, because I do like that thing of just like, it will be so good when I solve it, John. And that is the journey. And I do think that I enjoy seeing a business grow. And I think what's interesting about the Architecture Social is it's really kind of going through a few stages. Now, I'm my own worst enemy at judging myself sometimes, but I have to constantly remind myself this, because during the pandemic at the start, John, it started as a forum, and I was working in full-time employment at the time on furlough, and it's kind of the combination of ideas. Then I kind of backwards engineered a website from it, and recently as well, I've got I work for an architecture practice as well as setting up this new business. And so I kind of feel like I'm doing it the opposite way, John, where I started off with the forum and now the business is coming out of it. And being really transparent, and I talk to you about this all the time in the office, is what's really important right now is turning a profit. And there's several reasons. It would be nice for my lifestyle, but more importantly, stuff like the beautiful, mega tick, but stuff like the forum and the beautiful things of the Architecture Social, it needs to be paid for. And the art form for me at the moment is trying to get the business to make sure that the website and the forum and everything is self-sufficient in a way that doesn't kind of tarnish it. So, for example, I could approach quite a few companies and ask for an investment, but my worry there is, John, sometimes when you've got an investment in, the formula can be meddled with, because really for an investment, you're trading something, a commodity, and then you could lose the magic there. So actually by bankrolling it myself, I hope I can kind of keep its integrity. And I'll tell you another good example I enjoy is I do enjoy that people can make what they want out of the Architecture Social, and within the limits, I can let people do what they want. So, for example, REBA, which I'm involved with on the REBA Council, are setting up a forum at the moment. And that's a lot of work, because it's a bit like when we were talking about your role, in the public sector as well. They're a membership body. They've got to represent everyone, which is geographically different ages, different demographics, everyone. Whereas there is something quite nice about, and as you know this, when it's your ship and your responsibility, I go, well, we don't need any of that. I'm just going to draw the line and do this. And so there is something slightly, I don't want to say Darwinistic about it, but there is nice that you can kind of draw the line on it. But at the same time, the responsibility comes with me. And the other thing I've learned, which is a blessing and the burden, is I have so many people which are super supportive of the Architecture Social, and even like yourself, coming on the podcast. I really, really appreciate it. But unfortunately, this life that we have as business owners, John, if we don't drive, if we don't steer the ship, it can hit the rocks, right?
It can. It could be like the Titanic.
It can hit the rocks.
And it hits an accounting iceberg.
Right. And so
before you know it,
and I speak to my dad all the time, and me and my dad have a really close relationship, and he's really supportive to me. And the analogy that I would give at the Architecture Social right now, John, is like it's a train that's going really fast on the tracks. And what it is, though, is I'm frantically shoving the coal in the engine, and I'm getting a little bit low on the coal, and the engine's going so fast it's burning all the coal, and I am holding on for dear life to put these coals in. And there's a thrill with that, but I'm the guy shoveling the coal in, right? And if I take a day off, you know where I'm going with this. It's like that coal's not going in, and the money is the coal there. So, you know, I'm always open about these things, and I really, really believe that everything can be fixed. But that's where I'm at right now. So how do I want to phrase it? I'm in the midst of it. And so to answer your question around about where you said, what do I enjoy about it? I enjoy the madness of it. I enjoy the learning. I enjoy the experience. I enjoy it all. But holy moly, a quieter life it would have been to work before. So, and tell you what, one thing, John, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this quote. I read it today and I burst out laughing to myself. So it was a little bit sad, but it was funny, right? And so someone posted online and they said, I got sick and tired of living the 9-to-5 life. So so what I've done now is I've set up a business, and I realized that I work 24/7.
Am I right in saying that the biggest difficulty with running a small business or starting up a business, certainly for me, is that you can turn off your emails, you can switch your phone off, you can put your phone over there, right? You can do all of that, but your brain is constantly thinking about, well, you know, I've got all of these things I could be doing to make my business better, and your brain is constantly churning, constantly. And that is as you say, the 24/7 thing, isn't it? Really, with business.
Yeah, and you know, but it is on the other hand, you know, I've been a full-time employee and I've done it for several years. I worked at McDonald Company. I know remember I've worked alongside the planning team and so forth, and I've got great experiences there. But there is something about running your own business. It's not for everyone. But bizarrely, it kind of suits who I am. And so, yes, I wear my heart on the sleeve and keep things open. That's why, you know, I like to put all these things out there. That's why I like to be open about my super mega casino and open about my foray with the Tesco roundabout and running a business.
Don't forget the mega casino, Steve. We're gonna return to that. We'll find a good site for you,
John. Listen,
we'll find a good site. We will.
I've kept everything's on backup, my friend. I've got all of my old Excel documents. Maybe what I'll even do is I'll put a little link in this podcast episode. It'll be your website, and for the stragglers, I'll put the mega casino project, and then you can have a look at it as well. You know,
well, I mean, it sounds like absolute gold. You know, there's definitely some legs in that.
Well, anyone that they can run with, they can run with it. I'm too busy with the Architecture Social. You can have the mega casino idea. Just put me on a little plaque on a bench somewhere, and that will do me. Do you want a percentage at the end? Do you want a percentage of the fee? Do you know what though? Right, and this is it. Do you know, when I always find it funny, John, that people get really worried about business ideas. So I spoke to someone, and they're like, "I've got a business idea, but I can't tell you because you might steal it." And you know, I'm just thinking, like I'm so busy. Do you really think I'm going to nick your idea? My mega casino's okay. Steal it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, when people go like, I had the idea once for that show and then someone did it. And you're like, everyone had the idea for Britain's Got Talent. Come on. You know what I mean? Calm down. But, hey, John, do you have any more questions before we go? Any more questions for me?
I guess my one question would be,
go on.
You have successfully brought an awful lot of people together through the work that you've done so far.
Yeah.
And you might have already answered this in part, but what inspired you to do it? But particularly, what inspired you to do it in the way that you did it?
Okay, it's a good question and truthful answer. So you ever seen the film Slumdog Millionaire, where he's kind of learns all the answers while he's walking along? So I would, on the last few years of my employment, I'd be like, wouldn't it be great if there was somewhere where all these times, because in recruitment, you're speaking to students and you never have enough time to speak to them. They ring you up and basically you're instructed in the way recruitment is geared is that you have to follow the time on tasks which are going to pay. So, for example, you were you were contracting and working permanent planning. There's an assignment there around it, so it make more sense if I follow up that. And what that meant is that all these students would get you wouldn't have time for them. So you'd either, kind of fob them off or you give them a little bit of tidbit, but that didn't really solve the problem of what they were looking for. And actually, I felt that a lot of people were lost. So I would constantly get that happening over and over and over. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to build like a resource where you could share this information that people could, be their own recruitment consultant to an extent and, to the CV and portfolios. And then when I was on furlough for the first month, I drank like copious amounts of wine and stuff. And then I was just like, oh, my brain's going to mush. And I found the domain for the Architecture of Social was like £10, which is really rare because a lot of domains, as you know, because you made up your company name, which is a very smart move, but if like
I did from scratch.
Yeah, but maybe snowplanning.com is like $3,000, which is kind of insane, isn't it?
Well, I didn't want the ties, I guess, to my name in many respects because it has. If you Google it, you get a lot of.
Oh, this is popular. The old Jon Snow. You got the Game of Thrones fan, which I was. And then
there's that.
Is there some bad Jon Snows out there as well?
Well, no. So there's a pub. Have you been to the Jon Snow pub in Soho?
No.
So the pub was named after the chap. He was a scientist that discovered where the cholera outbreak came from.
With the well and everything. Oh
yeah, he tracked it.
He's on Wikipedia.
To a hand pumped.
Yeah, you're done, John. And and yours, you've got a lot to offer and you're successful. But if a guy solved that on Wikipedia, we're not doing good in the Google rankings.
I'm not getting close, am I? So that was why Jon Snow was never really going to be a great name for a planning company in my book.
Fair enough.
So hence Tetrik came out of somewhere.
It's amazing. Look, and to fully answer your question, and then we'll round up with wherever we can find you. You learn bits and bobs. So, I used to crazily, one of my passions was web design. And that's why I built the website. It's because I've learned bits and bobs over the years. And a lot of it's done in WordPress. And it's building up that knowledge and building up that recruitment and then having the confidence to kind of put it in place. Or as you said quite rightly earlier, when you were talking about how you wanted to do your business in planning, I kind of felt, well, I had a bit of a twist in it. And the other bit is like doing stuff like this is that you go out of your comfort zone, but I think that good things come from it, John, and
I completely agree. And I think just to pick up on a point you made earlier, which I think was absolutely spot on, was that in terms of making mistakes, I don't think mistakes are a bad thing. I think mistakes are how you learn. And actually, like, that's the one thing that sort of starting my own business has taught me is every time you do something, you think, well, maybe next time I'll do it slightly different. And you're constantly like refining and adjusting what you do, aren't you? And actually, I don't know, the idea of a mistake is got negative connotations, but in many respects, it can be a really positive thing because, it's a way of describing how you're constantly learning and evolving and getting better, isn't it?
I agree.
And I think that's the challenge that I enjoy most about running my own company is at times you're screaming, at a computer screen because you've got God knows how much business-related admin to do. But you wouldn't have it any other way, would you?
You wouldn't have it any other way. Well, I think, that's a nice way to kind of end our little segue on it. Jon Snow, who wouldn't have it any other way. What a fantastic introduction to planning. And we'll have.
I was hoping for more. I was happy.
I've got a few. Yeah, look. Oh, that's.
I was hoping for more sound effects.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one.
Do you know what, Jon? I need to know them all before. But look at that. It sounds like it's like a little bit relaxing for the. Can you imagine? For anyone seeing it now, it sounds like
we're on a boat. We're on a boat on the Thames. Right.
The pandemic is over. Everyone's going. Hey!
The pandemic's over. It's a Sunday morning. There's sort of mist in the air. We're on a little rowboat.
Yeah,
with that music.
Yeah, do you know what? I've run out. The music playing stopped, didn't it? But we will get more music for next time. So, Jon,
I think we should.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and we will definitely do another one. But before you go, everyone can reach out. I'm going to put all the links into the podcast, as I always do. But you can find Jon Snow on LinkedIn. You can find Jon on the Architecture Social, and you can visit his website, which is tetrikplanning.co.uk, which is TETRICK, Tetrik Planning, I can't even say plan anymore. Planning, planning.co.uk.
That planning, yes.
Yes. Tetrikplanning.co.uk. That link will be in the description. Thank you so much for joining me, Jon. Stay on the line while this podcast uploads, and we will get you on another time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the time. As I say, thank you, and we'll see you again. See you again soon, no doubt.
Cheers, Jon.
Thank you.